Welcome back to another session of biochemistry classes. So we've already completed with the, all the metabolic pathways like the carbohydrate metabolism, lipid metabolism and the protein metabolism. So today we'll go on to study about the integration of all these metabolism. So how do you define integration of metabolism? It's a various anabolic and catabolic pathways for the energy supply and the biosynthesis of the compounds which are closely coordinated. Okay, so this is known as integration of metabolism. So what is the significance of this integrated metabolism? It is the most important thing is it maintains the constant blood glucose levels, and it also regulates the intermediate metabolites, and it also helps in construction of the macromolecules, supply of suitable fluids for fuel for the tissues, especially the ATP, and then understanding of the specific dynamic action of all these food substances, and also the protein sparing action of carbohydrates we study, and also the fate of the monomers like the amino acid, fatty acids and the glucose, and also the chemical transformation that falls onto the 6 types of the enzymes we study. And this is the significance of this integrated metabolism. What is the purpose of this? As we said, the first one is the formation of ATPs that helps in the muscle contraction and also the active transport of the macromolecules. It also helps in formation of the reducing power, that is the NADPH, that helps in the synthesis of the fatty acids and the cholesterol, and also helps in the building blocks for the biosynthesis, like glycerol gets converted to glycerol 3-phosphate, succinyl-CoA gets converted to succinic acid, ribose 5-phosphate gets converted to pseudoheptylose 7-phosphate, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, and PEP2 the amino acids. And also it helps in the formation of tetrahydrofolate and also S-adenosyl methionine, and these help in 1 carbon unit transfer and also in the transfer or the transmethylation reactions, right? So now what are the metabolic regulations that we've studied? We've studied allosteric regulation, that is the phosphofructokinase, one good example in glycolysis, acetyl-CoA carboxylase in fatty acid synthase, and then you have the covalent modification. In covalent modification, the phosphorylation and dephosphorylation plays an important role, and also the enzyme levels like the feedback inhibition also plays an important role in regulation, and also any specialized tissues or organ where the metabolic reaction takes place like the liver. Okay, so that is one important metabolic regulation, and also compartmentalization, that is some reactions takes place in the cytoplasm, some reactions takes place in the mitochondria. So different compartments also plays an important role in regulation of all these metabolic pathway. So when we say compartmentalization of the different pathways, so in the cytosol you have the glycolysis, HMP shunt, then the fatty acid synthesis, and then you in the mitochondrial matrix you have the TCA cycle, oxidative phosphorylation, beta oxidation of fatty acids, ketone body formation, and partly in the cytosol and partly in the mitochondria you have the gluconeogenesis and the urea cycle, right? So this is importance when it takes place in different compartments. So next we'll go on to the metabolic role of the different organs. Okay, so the first one we'll go on to is the brain. So we all know from previous that the brain doesn't store any fuel or ATPs, right? So the glucose is the important source of energy. So glucose we need about 12 grams per day to supply fuel to the brain. So in anoxia, when there is decreased oxygen, what happens? The rate of the lactate formed by glycolysis increases 5 to 8 times in 1 minute. Okay, so what happens if the blood glucose levels falls below 30 milligrams per deciliter, then it is a fatal case. Now what happens? The brain utilizes acetoacetate. So what is the importance of that? The fatty acids are not utilized directly because it is bound to albumin, and because of this it cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. But acetoacetate, it is used to get converted into ketosis in ketone body, so it helps in ketosis and also in starvation. Okay, so what happens in starvation? In starvation, about 60 to 70% of the energy required is supplied by the ketone bodies. In anoxia, the ammonia levels are increased, and this ammonia is trapped by the glutamic acid and it gets converted to glutamine and it is released, and then glutamate can be used for the synthesis of the amino acid. So this is about the brain tissue. Next we'll go on to the muscle profile. Okay, so what happens in the muscles? Muscle can use glucose, fatty acids and the ketone bodies for fuel. The muscles have stores of glycogen. So how is it used? So the glycogen gets converted to glucose. This glucose by glycolysis forms pyruvate and ATP is released. Pyruvate gets converted to lactate and NAD is released, and this is recycled. Lactate enters into the bloodstream and enters into the liver tissue, gets converted to pyruvate by gluconeogenesis, gets converted to glucose 6 phosphate. Again here glycogen gets converted to glucose 6 phosphate whenever glucose is required. This glucose enters into the bloodstream and this is circulated. So this cycle we call it as a Core's cycle, right? So what happens in the muscle tissue during vigorous muscle we do exercises, right? So what happens in the muscle tissue? Whenever we do vigorous exercises, 90% of the oxygen is consumed. So after a period of intense muscular activity, we breathe in heavy. So more of the oxygen is utilized for oxidative phosphorylation. So to resort the ATPs, the phosphocreatine levels will increase and the liver requires ATP to convert the lactate back into glucose. So this is about when we do rigorous exercise. So we can have a look here. The skeletal muscle, the creatine phosphate is formed. The energy requirement in the skeletal muscle changes depending on whether the muscle is resting or contracting. The phosphocreatine is used to rapidly regenerate ATPs from ADP using CPK, right? So what is it? In the light activity or rest, the blood glucose, fatty acids and the ketone bodies are utilized by the muscle tissue in the presence of phosphocreatine kinase, and ATP is released, carbon dioxide is given off. ATP by muscle contraction gets converted to ATP plus PI and this gets circulated. But whenever there is excess of exercise, what happens? The muscle glycogen gets converted to lactate. So what happens here? The muscle tissue phosphocreatine gets converted to creatine, and what happens here? Because of rephosphorylation, ATP is recovered and ADP is converted, and this again goes as a cyclic pattern. Okay, so this is about the muscle tissue. What happens in resting? As we said, in resting, the major source of fuel for the muscle is the fatty acid. So during fasting or excessive activity, the muscle tissue is degraded into the amino acids and the carbon skeletons are used for fuel. So what happens? The muscle tissues lacks the enzyme to convert ammonia into urea. So instead, the ALT transfers the amino group to pyruvate to form alanine. So what is it here? The muscle protein, the amino acids are formed, the ammonia is released, ammonia is trapped by glutamate. By transamination reaction, alanine aminotransferase gets converted to alpha ketoglutarate, where pyruvate gets converted to alanine. Alanine enters into the blood circulation and then alanine enters into the liver tissue again. By transamination reaction, alpha ketoglutarate gets converted to glutamate and ammonia is released. By urea cycle, it forms urea. This pyruvate again by gluconeogenesis gets converted to glucose and it enters into the blood circulation into the muscle tissue by glycolysis forms pyruvate and this again gets circulated. So this is glucose alanine cycle. Okay, so this is in the resting state. So this is about the skeletal muscle. Next we'll go on to the heart tissue, cardiac muscle. So what it utilizes about 6 kgs of ATP per day and it derives its energy by oxidative metabolism of the fatty acids and the glucose. So the energy transferred to the heart myofibril occurs by creatine kinase. This phosphocreatine being a very small molecule than the ATP, it can easily diffuse into the myofibrils. So the myofibril creatine kinase catalyzes the reformation of ATP, and the free creatine diffuses back into the cardiac muscle. Okay, so this is about the cardiac muscle. Next, we'll go on to the adipose tissue. So what is it? Adipose tissue, the triacylglycerol or the triglycerides are stored in the adipose tissue, right? So when there is excess of glucose from the liver, the glucose gets converted to glycerol 3-phosphate and triglycerides are formed, right? So this is one form. So this will be released whenever the energy is required as fatty acids, right? So whenever there is increased VLDL, that is in starvation from the liver, the fatty acids are synthesized and enters as fatty acyl CoA and leads to the formation of triacylglycerols. There, what happens in starvation? The hormone sensitive lipase is activated, so it leads to formation of glycerol and fatty acid. Glycerol enters into the liver tissue. Fatty acids combines with albumin and complexes, and it enters into the liver tissue, right? So this is the liver is a major site of fatty acid synthesis. Okay, so this is about the adipose tissue. Next, we'll go on to the renal or the kidneys. So to produce urine, which is a vehicle for excreting water-soluble waste products, during starvation, the kidneys are an important site of gluconeogenesis and may synthesize up to half of the glucose. So blood plasma is filtered, water and glucose are reabsorbed from the renal tubules. Okay. Then what happens in the liver, the next tissue or the organ? So in the fed state, it takes in glucose from the circulation and it stores as glycogen. So the fatty acids in the liver are incorporated as VLDL and secreted into the circulation. So the major site for degradation of the amino acids and detoxification of ammonia to urea, right? So what happens in starvation? It provides glucose by glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis, and the ketone bodies are alternate source of fuel. So this is about the metabolic pathway that takes place in the different organs. Next, we'll go on to the hormonal regulation of metabolism. So what are the hormones that we know that play an important role in regulation? The most important is insulin and glucagon. So insulin, what does it do? It promotes glycogenesis, that is conversion of glucose to glycogen. It stimulates protein synthesis and decreases the breakdown of proteins into amino acid, and it decreases the breakdown of triglycerides in the adipose tissue into free fatty acids. It stimulates the uptake of glucose into the muscle and other tissues. It inhibits gluconeogenesis, glycogenolysis, that is glucose production by the liver, and it also enhances the synthesis of fatty acids. So this is the function of insulin. Next, we'll go on to glucagon. So glucagon, it increases the glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis, that is the release of glucose by the liver. It inhibits glycolysis, decreases glycogen synthesis, and it enhances synthesis of glucose from amino acids or the fatty acids, and it activates the lipases, that is it mobilizes the fatty acids and glycerol, right? So we'll go on to the other hormones, right? So in epinephrine, what happens? Epinephrine is secreted by the adrenal medulla hormone. It enhances the release of glucose from glycogen. It decreases the glucose utilization and it increases the release of the fatty acids from the adipose tissue. The cortisol, that is released from the adrenal cortex, it stimulates gluconeogenesis and increases the breakdown of proteins and fats. The growth hormone stimulates gluconeogenesis and lipolysis. ACTH, it is secreted by the adrenal pituitary. It enhances the release of cortisol, stimulates the release of fatty acids from adipose tissue. Thyroxine, secreted by the thyroid gland, it increases the rate of intestinal glucose absorption, enhances the release of glucose from glycogen. Okay, so these are the hormonal regulation of metabolic pathway. Next, we'll go on to the metabolic changes in the different states. So when we say states, it's like well-fed state, in the fasting, and in starvation. So first we'll go on to well-fed state. So what is it? Glucose, fatty acids, and the amino acids are helpful, right, during the well-fed state and enter into the bloodstream. So insulin facilitates the glucose utilization by the peripheral tissues, and excess of glucose is converted to fat and stored as triglycerides. So amino acids are utilized for protein synthesis, and high levels of insulin favors the anabolic pathways. Okay, so what are the enzymes that are activated and what are the enzymes that are inhibited during well-fed state? So all the enzymes of the glycolytic pathway are activated. Glycogen synthase is activated. Along with it, acetyl-CoA carboxylase enzyme is also activated. Enzymes that are inhibited are pyruvate carboxylase, PEPCK, phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase, fructose 1,6 bisphosphate, glucose 6 phosphate, glycogen phosphorylase, CAT1, and hormone sensitive lipase. Okay, so next we'll just have a look at what are the metabolic changes in well-fed state. So as we said, through the diet we get in glucose, the amino acids, and the fat. So the glucose enters into the bloodstream and gets converted to glycogen, and it gets deposited in the liver. The amino acids are utilized for the synthesis of the energy in the brain and also into the muscle tissue. The fatty acids enter and form the VLDL, and this goes into the circulation, and also it enters into the adipose tissue and stored as triacylglycerols. Okay, so this happens in the well-fed state, and insulin levels regulate this pathway. Next, what is it? The metabolic changes in fasting. So what happens here? The blood glucose is maintained by glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis. If fasting is continued, then fatty acids mobilize from the adipose tissue under the influence of glucagon. So the glucose is utilized by the brain, RBCs, and the renal cortex. Next, what are the enzymes that are activated and the enzymes that are inhibited? So glycogen phosphorylase, all the glucogenic hormones, hormone sensitive lipase, and carnitine for 1 enzymes are all activated. What are enzymes that are inhibited? That is glycogen synthase, and acetyl-CoA carboxylase enzyme is inhibited, right? So we'll have a look at what happens in the fasting. There is nil food intake. So what happens? The adipose tissue, the free fatty acids are regulated and it converts into the fatty acids. What happens in the gluconeogenesis is activated. So the glucose is synthesized. From glycogen also glucose is synthesized, and this glucose is utilized by the brain. And what happens? The fatty acids enter into the muscle tissue and alanine is synthesized, and alanine enters into the liver and enters and forms through the gluconeogenesis. Glucose is synthesized. So all this metabolic process is regulated by the glucagon hormone, and glucose is utilized by the brain, RBCs, and the renal cortex. Okay, so this is about the metabolic changes in fasting. Next, we'll go on to the metabolic changes in starvation. Under this, we have 3 stages. Okay, the first stage is the initial stage, that is between 2 to 3 days, where the liver glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis takes place, that is glucose synthesis. In the second stage, it's a longer period. Usually it lasts for about 2 weeks. So 80 to 90% of the energy derived from the fat, that is especially the adipose tissue. The third stage, it generally lasts for a week, and the energy is obtained from the breakdown of the tissue proteins, right? So this is the different stages. So now we'll go on to the different stages of starvation. So the first stage, what happens? It is glycogenolysis, that is the blood glucose is maintained by the hepatic glycogenolysis. The second stage is gluconeogenesis, that is the amino acids are released from the muscle forms a major substrate for gluconeogenesis. The nitrogen is transferred from the amino acids to form pyruvate to form alanine, that is the glucose alanine cycle. The third stage is the lipolysis. Here the high levels of glucagon and insulin stimulates a cyclic AMP mediated lipolysis by increasing the hormone sensitive lipase. So the skeletal muscle, heart and the kidney will depend on the fatty acids for energy. So this simultaneously inactivates the pyruvate dehydrogenase by phosphorylation, and this is the mechanism by which this acts. So the stimulation of the activity of the CAT by glucagon will increase the rate of beta oxidation, lipolysis, and it also provides acetyl-CoA and also the ketone bodies, right? So now we have another fourth stage, that is the acidosis. So in this state there is excess of ketone body formation, and because of this it leads to acidosis, and thereby bicarbonate buffering also increase. So the pH falls, and compensatory mechanism here is hyperventilation. So the insulin levels are decreased, but the glucagon is increased, and there is a fall in T3 levels, and this will lead to decreased basal energy requirement. Okay, and then there is a fifth state. This is death from starvation. So the metabolic acidosis and dehydration, if it is not treated, will lead to death, and the normal fuel reserves are utilized for fasting starvation up till 45 to 60 days. Okay, so this is the last stage. Next you'll go on to the clinical features of starvation. So there's loss of weight, dry skin, then you have hair loss, muscle wasting, loss of subcutaneous fat, edema without hypoalbuminemia, and there is distension of the abdomen with diarrhea. So these are the clinical features of starvation. Okay, so this finishes with the integration of metabolism. So we studied about the integration of metabolism in the different organs, the brain, cardiac muscle, the skeletal muscle, and also the liver and the renal tissue. And then we spoke about the metabolic involvement in the according to the hormone regulation, insulin, glucagon especially. And then we spoke about the different stages in well-fed state. Then we spoke about the fasting state, and then the starvation, right? So this finishes with integration of metabolism. So most of the time the questions that are asked in integrated metabolism is you have about starvation or fasting, and then you have the liver involvement in metabolic role, and also the hormonal regulation of integration of metabolism. Okay, so this is about this topic. In the next class we'll go on to another topic. Thank you. Have a nice day.